Okay, we're going to do a bit of foundation piecing here on onto paper. I know there's many different methods that you can do to approach this, but we're just going to show you a very basic approach today. Now this is a New York Beauty template printed on just very lightweight paper, and we're going to be stitching on the line. So some of you may have not done this before, so I might be talking mumbo jumbo, but just bear with me. So when you've got your template and you've printed it, you need to cut it out just beyond the outer line, just so you've got a little bit extra. And when you're placing your pieces, as long as you cover all the edges, you know you're going to be okay. So this is one that I've already cut out. Now we're going to be sewing on, placing the fabric on the back, but sewing on the drawn line. So for that to happen, you're going to have to see the line from the front to the back. Now some people like to hold it up to a window and trace it on, or maybe use stitch and tear, but I'm just going to show you how I go about it. So this is the how it's going to look at the end. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how to get there. So here's my template now, and I've just spent a minute placing, it's just a business card or a bookmark along the lines, and just folding and creasing along each one, just so you've got, I don't know if you can see that, just so that you can see the lines. They've been transferred from the drawn line to the back. Okay, well this is not numbered, and it's pretty straightforward piece to start off with. So, but sometimes when you get a piece for foundation piecing, it will have numbers on. Well, there's no numbers on this because you can really start anywhere. So I'm just going to say start in the middle. Now these pieces are cut to size, and the wider pieces are going to go as the background, and I'm going to put white for the spikes. Okay, so number one, the way I remember this is number one always looks up. Okay, so we're going to have piece number one here in the center, and just remember that your fabric number one always looks up, so it's always facing up. That's just something I do to remember. So I'm going to make sure that that entire centerpiece is covered, including the seam allowance, which is at the top and bottom, by my piece of fabric. Now you can put a little pin in if you want. After you've done a few, you may not need to, but just for now I'm going to put that in because I'm going to be holding it up to show you. So I'm going to use my bookmark again, just to place on the seam that we're going to be sewing, and you're going to be sewing on the drawn line, and I'm just going to fold the paper, and then I'm going to fold the fabric also. Okay, just so that it's going to give me, it's going to show me the sewing line where I'm going to sew. Okay, so you can see I've just made a crease in the fabric. Okay, so this is where I'm going to be sewing on that crease. You might not be able to see it here, but when you get sewing, then you will be able to when you're doing it yourself. So now on that crease, I'm going to place over my white piece 1/4 of an inch, roughly. It doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be perfect, over that crease line. Don't worry about this for now, and this is where some people get confused. They put the piece of fabric here, but no, you want to put it on the crease line. Okay, so I'm holding my two pieces firmly, and I'm going to turn this over, and then I'm going to sew onto the first drawn line. So I'm sewing the two pieces of fabric together, and I'm sewing through the paper. Okay, so this is my first piece, and yes, this is still covering number one, and now this is covering the narrow piece when you fold it open. But because it's a light fabric, we want to get rid of the dark fabric from underneath. So there's a couple of ways you can go about this. You can fold this back and move the paper away, which leaves that. And we want to cut this, so I've got no paper here, so you can place this on the board and just cut that so that it's nice and neat. Or if you've got one of these fancy rulers, Some people love them, some people don't. It's entirely up to you. It's an add a quarter ruler, and if you look, it's got a little ridge under there. You just slide the ridge over the paper, and then you can place that on the board, and you can just cut, and that's leaving it nice and neat on the other side. And you're not going to nick the paper or anything, which is that can happen too. So that's my first piece. Now we're going to do another piece to show you. So it doesn't matter which way you work, but I'm going to come this way. So the dark piece is covering the wider bit, and the light piece is now covering the small bit, which is here. So I'm going to fold the next line. And the paper's already creased because I pre-creased it, so it's quite easy to work out where I'm going. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but the thing to do now is to just get a piece of fabric and try it. Some pieces of fabric and try it on a practice one if you haven't done it before. So now I've creased in the second one, and I'm going to, again, that's the line that we're going to be sewing on. Alright, so I'm going to place this over this, just 1/4 of an inch over, because we're going to sew and then flip it. Okay, so my next bit. Now in the instructions I've got you to cut the pieces quite big, just to give you plenty of an allowance, but as you get more proficient at it you can size those down a little bit. So I'm just going to show you again. So you open this out, there's lots of extra fabric. So we're going to place this on the board and place the ruler at the crease of the paper, and we're going to cut the excess off. Now another thing you can do is you can leave your fabric a little bit wider and use the offcut again. But just to start off with, I would just get the technique and get yourself into a working motion. So now you can see we've done the first piece, and we just continue to flip and stitch until the whole piece is covered. And then when you've finished, you'll have some overlap of fabric along the edges. So we're just going to trim it back to the outer line, which you can see here. And that's what it will look like when it's finished. So good luck with that, and it might take a while to get used to it, but don't worry, once you get the hang of it you'll be fine, and the best thing to do is not get frustrated and just enjoy it. Okay?